Richard, at this point in your practice, I'm curious how working inside people's mouths, like what sort of place does intraoral work have in how you think about balance in the body and working with people?
I remember when I first got exposed to intraoral work, sort of around the time that I went through a licensing program and in the short time afterwards. I can still remember really vividly that sense that when I would put my fingers in people's mouths, I would feel really disoriented, like my sense of the anatomy just kind of went poof, and like I thought I knew where I was, and then all of a sudden, as I like to say in classes, it's dark in there. So I definitely had the sense of other people seem to know where the lateral pterygoid is, but I don't think I do. And so one thing that's been really fun about this phase in my life is that now I know the landscape of the inside of the mouth well enough so that that sense of I don't know where I am isn't there anymore. And so it's really fun to have that be different, and it's fun to think like I'd like to help other people feel that way too.
Mm-hmm.
A huge component of knowing my way around the inside of the mouth is helping clients get oriented to doing self-care. So helping, like, guiding clients to feel like, well, let me show you where your lateral pterygoid is, and can you tell how that actually might be an important part of what's off in your, say, the balance of your jaw. So I find it really interesting and fun to sort of help tune people into that landscape in their own mouths. So that's one thing. I'm also really fascinated with the relationship between what you can feel and what you can do from the inside versus what you can feel and do from the outside. So sort of having a sense of the versatility of like knowing that you could do it either way in many, many cases. So that's really interesting to me. Some of the things that I've learned from you that are the intraoral things that kind of come from the osteopathic cranial manipulation world, where it really is about trying to use the maxilla as a, for example, as a sort of a handle for balancing the cranial base and things like that. I think for me have been some of the things that have felt like now, this is something that I can see can make a huge difference for people really quite commonly. So those kinds of techniques are actually the techniques that I use the most in my own practice when I think about why would I need to put my fingers in someone's mouth. So that's a big deal for me. And just fairly recently, as I started to get more tuned in, I sort of found, because we had talked about working on the tongue, and all of a sudden, at a point not too long ago, I realized that I hadn't been thinking about balance in the tongue the way that I sort of thought about balancing everything else. Once I started to look at things that way, I realized there were really simple ways of thinking about finding balance in the tongue and the sort of origins of the tongue that go up and back and down and back, that to me made me feel like all of a sudden the tongue is the most interesting thing to work on inside the mouth. And that was a big flip for me, because before that I thought like, oh sure, tongue, what sort of, why not, since it's in there, we might as well work on it. A few years ago, the law changed in Washington that made it legal for massage practitioners to do intraoral work. And so now we find ourselves teaching a fair number of intraoral classes. So how's that for you?
Oh, well, I love this work. And when I first learned intraoral work, it was pretty limited. It was sort of, let's work with the medial and lateral pterygoid muscles that help close the jaw. So the work was really oriented to sort of relaxing the muscles, and it went along with and was designed to go along with working on the masseter, working on the upper neck and the temporalis, areas that commonly hold a lot of tension for people. And it's really good work, and a lot of people, a lot of clients receiving the work often kind of go, wow, I didn't know I had so much tension in my face or in my jaw. Of course, many other clients are looking for therapeutic intervention. They're treating TMJ problems, or they're getting pain when they're biting or swallowing, or they've had an injury to the jaw. Various things that are sort of maybe a little bit more complex. My initial work with intraoral was really oriented to sort of muscle tone, muscle tension, and relieving that tension. Then in my study with craniosacral work, I learned all sorts of intraoral techniques that had a focus on mobilization of the bones and making sure that the bones that house the sinuses, for example, are free and mobile to enhance sinus drainage, or particular techniques that help venous flow in the cranial base as a way to help people with migraines. The face, the mouth, and the face provides an interesting doorway to the underside of the cranium. In craniosacral work, there's a lot there that's very exciting and interesting to do, and so this sort of second phase of my intraoral career focused on that. And then when I studied structural integration, I started to really think about balance and gravity, and I got this whole new set of ideas to consider about how does this 15-pound bowling ball sit on top of the spine, and the face is the whole front half of that, so it's sort of like I want some techniques for the front of the rib cage. I don't just want to work the back of the rib cage and the spine, but I know I want to work the front of the rib cage or the front of the legs or the front of the feet. Same thing, here's a segment. I want techniques to work with and balance the front, and gaining balance in the front of the face and cranium assists balance in the back and the neck. All of these strategies and all of these methods really helped solidify in my practice the importance and the role for intraoral work. And it's not work that's commonly taught at the entry level, so getting additional training in it, focused training in it, I think is really helpful and really useful, not only to give you new strategies, to give you a clarity of the anatomy, the landscape, but also just to kind of get yourself comfortable with putting on gloves. How do I navigate the interface with the client, the communication with the client, in order to make it safe and easy for them to receive. And as you mentioned, the role of teaching clients to treat their own muscles inside the mouth. All of that is really crucial, I think, for the education. In our attempts to share it with people, we've come up with 3 different classes. The first one we call Essentials of Intraoral Work, and that one really focuses on the myofascial layers that are in and around the mouth and the anterior neck, also particularly have to do with closing the mouth, mastication, right? So we'll include masseter and temporalis in that as well. So that's a good class. It's a 2-day, 16-hour class. It's a good entry point for manual therapists who are really oriented to working with muscles and myofascia. We also then have an advanced intraoral class where we are kind of looking at the next deeper layer of soft tissue, working with the tongue and the deep anterior neck muscles. Also working with balancing the bones of the face. So all of that looks towards working with deeper level and bringing questions of alignment more fully to bear. Our third class that we work with is called Balancing the Face for Structural Integrators. So this class is a 3-day class designed specifically for people working within a structural integration model, working within a series. We again look at the deep layers of the tongue and the deep layers of the neck, balancing the mobility of bones in the face, taking it further with looking at the alignment of the cranial base and the dural membranes in the skull and upper spine. So all of that work then also focused to how does this work fit within the protocol of structural integration in that classic head and neck session that Ida Rolf spoke about in her classic series.